We've got some time now just to address some questions, and I noticed during our session we've actually had some great questions fed in by the chat feed, and Simon and Philip have actually been just working on addressing some of those questions. Something that I realised I didn't do at the very beginning was actually introduce Philip and Simon properly, so apologies for that. I know they can hear me, and I'm hoping they don't beat me up at the end of this. But just to let you know that Simon and Philip are both qualified financial planners who also work with Arrive Wealth Victoria. You can tell I'm in the
well, no, your health and the wealth, they're intertwined.
Indeed. So look, let's move on to some questions, because we did have some really great questions fed in via email, and also as we've seen during the chat this evening. But I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to ask Joan, if that's okay. The first one came through, and it's a lady who said, I have advanced breast cancer in liver and many bone lesions, but although incurable and poorer outcome for those with liver lesions, length of time to live is unknown. To gain access to superannuation to use when in weller times, how do you address this? And I guess that's a question that I also saw coming through in the chat session. It's so difficult to predict the future, and you know, whether you get the money now and then what happens if you run out, and all of those sorts of issues. So, Joan, we'd really appreciate your thoughts and your feedback about that issue, if that's okay.
It's you know, we all have limited resources, and it's a matter of thinking about what we need and what we can manage with. And the trade-off always is between spending now or conserving and reserving for the future. The issue with superannuation is that once it's out and spent, there are no other resources to replenish it for many people. For those of us who do then have additional resources, super can still be contributed to up till the age of 65. We can put money back in, but there are caps. So if we're working, the maximum we can put in pre-tax salary is $25,000 a year. If we have other resources, we can put $150,000 a year in each, or under 65, we can roll it up and do a 3-year of $450,000. But those are if we have resources. Right now, if you're in a position where you're needing to draw under your super to survive and to pay for your illness and to pay for your medication, then the decision really around using your super now becomes one of it's not a decision I've ever had to make, and I'm not looking to walk in your shoes, but to me, that would probably be your primary concern. Down the track, the support of Centrelink, and if that uses all your financial resources, there still is the support of the pension structure in our society, and we still have that financial support for those who need it the most. But really, if you have to take money out of super and use your money out of super, get advice so you take it out in the most tax-effective way, which means that you take less out than you take the minimum out that you need. And when you have a chance to put some back in again, get a little bit of advice to see that you're putting it back in the right format. But again, that's the trade-off. It's a very personal trade-off between consumption now and consumption in the future. And none of us have a crystal ball on that one.
And I think also, Joan, just something that has been constantly on my mind throughout this whole session, we're talking about money and finances and figures, but there's also the emotional impact of thinking about, gosh, what if it is only 12 months? And you know, there's not a financial solution to that, but I just did want to name it as, wow, this is actually really quite difficult to get your head around. So thanks for your comments. There's another question that's come through from Mandy, which is, I would like to access my super to help us financially. I've been told by my super company that I cannot, as I do not have insurance on it. I've always had insurance on my policy. The policy was created in March 2012. I did not create this policy, so I'm very confused. So I know that you did touch on insurance and super during the presentation, but Joan, I just wondered if you had any comments about that question. It does sound like a confusing situation.
If you had insurance in your super and then you have a new policy, it's a little hard. It sounds as though you've rolled over your super or you've changed your super funds. Because you have insurance in one super fund, and if you roll into another, it does not automatically take the insurance with you. The insurance offering in each super fund is discrete to that super fund. When we're looking at our clients and they're wanting to change super funds, the first thing we do is look at what insurances they have. We will open the new super fund if that's appropriate for them, of course. We will apply for new insurances. Once those insurances are set and in force, we will then close the existing super fund or roll it into the new one. But it's sounding like there might have been some rollover. The first point, though, for the super fund to say that you can't access your money, if you go to them straight off, no, you can't, they won't let you. So you do need to go to Centrelink first to either talk to them for the financial hardship or on the compassionate grounds. Once you go back to your super fund with that letter from Centrelink, they will allow you to access your funds.
That's such good information. Thank you, Joan. I'm going to put in another question here, and I think this really speaks of when you're living with advanced cancer, it's not necessarily that you're planning for dire consequences really quickly. So you're also thinking about, goodness me, I could be living with this for a very long time and planning for my financial future for quite some time. So this question is, can you please advise when I will be able to apply for life insurance, i.e. do I have to be in remission after a certain period or stable for a certain period?
That's how long is a piece of string for because every cancer is so different. Once you have cancer and you are in remission and you are stable, you can then apply for life insurance and insurances down the track. 12 months would be too soon, but it depends on what sort of cancer you had and what sort of treatment you had. So yes, you can apply for life insurance again. Yes, you need to have a reasonable amount of time to show or therefore your body has settled and you're in remission. But what you will probably find when you do apply for life insurance again is that the insurance company will load your premiums for various conditions. So, if you've got the standard premium already because you've had cancer, that's a 50% loading. So you're paying 1.5 times the premium for your cover. Then, depending on various other hurdles, such as the extent of your cancer, the type of your cancer, the type of treatments you received, will throw in other hurdles, which will bring another 50% and another 50%. When it gets up to 300%, your insurance application is just deferred. Deferral is the polite way of being declined these days. But what you can do is go for a pre-assessment. So you can generally say, I've had this, and this. This is my treatment. This is where I've been for the last 2 or 3 years. What is my likelihood? So instead of then going through the whole expense of going back to your doctors for everything, you can at least do a little bit of a pre-assessment. And we do that a lot for our clients because it can be quite a traumatic experience going through all the tests and procedures and answering all the questions and just reliving everything when you're applying for insurance again after you've had cancer.
So, Joan, when you said we do that for clients, is that something then that you organise with the insurance company on behalf of a client?
One of the real powers of having a financial advisor work with you on your insurances is we deal with a number of clients and we have good relationships with underwriters. So we could go straight to the underwriter, which I do, and we all do. We do. And I'll say, look, and it's not just cancer. It's things like depression. It's a lot of the common illnesses. There are so very few people out there who've been touched by nothing. So very few, unless they're the bulletproof 20-year-olds who don't even think about getting life insurance, of course. So, the question is, we've had this is the reason why, this is how it was treated, this is where we're at now, and this is the ongoing preventative work that we're doing or not. And the underwriter will listen to everything and they'll say, okay, well, based on that, we can do this. If you're looking for something like trauma insurance, which isn't life insurance, so there may even be, all right, we'll give you insurance, but we will exclude cancer, or we will exclude melanomas, or we'll exclude, certain things. But you've at least got insurance there for, if you have a car accident or you have heart disease or something else like that. So there are, different insurances that you can still think about after you have, come back to some normality and you have a good prognosis.
Thank you, Joan. And we're running, fairly close to time, but there is, and we're not going to get through all of the questions that were emailed through. We actually got a really large number, which was fantastic that people had such great questions. Some of the questions were actually addressed in the presentation, which was excellent. But I just wanted to say that Joan and Simon and Philip have actually undertaken to provide some written answers to some of these questions that came through that weren't necessarily addressed in the presentation. So we'll provide some more information after the webinar about how to get hold of that information. But there was just one more question that came through that I thought, this is probably going to be something that a lot of people have in common with this person. So I'll just read it out to you, Joan, and it'd be great to get your comments. My father has been left some money which will be passed on to me when he passes away, if that is before me. How do I allocate this to my children and husband in my will? I want to make sure that everyone is looked after properly without any issues coming up. Is there a clause that I just add to my will, or does there need to be a special document written up? So I just thought that was a good question because we're all, a lot of us have ageing parents, and when you're unwell yourself, it can make the waters muddy. And so I just wondered if you could give us a comment on that, Joan.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't emphasise more the importance of having a will, and particularly just to allow your loved ones not have to fight with the courts or go through the process of applying to manage your estate. The will lets you do it. With your father's assets, though, and the risk that you may predecease your dad, you'll need to have your dad organise his will, because Dad's will say, hypothetically, I've got 4 children, 25% to each of my children. Dad, now, if that's all Dad's will says, then you go ahead of Dad, and there's 3 kids left. So suddenly all Dad's estate just goes equally to the remaining 3. What Dad has to put in his will is equally to all of my children, or this special bequest to my daughter. And in the event that she predeceases me, it is to go to her children or whomever you want that to go to in whatever way. But that needs to be done through your dad's will, not through your will. And that can be done quite easily to Dad's will. You can just get a codicil or an addendum to Dad's will. You don't even have to go and get Dad's will rewritten. But the other really important thing to think about, when you're talking to Dad about your will, his will, is to make sure that all the other beneficiaries under your dad's will understand what is intended and what's happening and why that's happening, because people, even though you do that, wills can still be challenged. And, death sometimes brings about some behaviours that we don't like even to acknowledge. But having things prepared up front and organised right at the outset, for your dad's will particularly, will preserve that amount in the absence of a challenge, of course, for your loved ones. So, yeah, and your dad will do that for you.
Thanks so much, Joan. Well, look, we're running quite close to time now, so we will close the questions at this point. But as I said, I'm aware that there are some people who've put some questions in that we haven't managed to get to. So I guess that just indicates the huge breadth of issues that living with advanced cancer can raise, and particularly around this financial planning. So once again, thank you so much to Joan and also to Philip and Simon for sharing your expertise. I did just want to spend a couple of minutes just telling you a little bit about our project partners, because without their support we wouldn't have been able to have this event tonight. So just to let you know about the Breast Cancer Network Australia. So this is a national organisation for Australians personally affected by breast cancer. And just so that you know, there are free services and resources that come from BCNA, including, importantly, for those who don't know, those who have been diagnosed or are living with a secondary breast cancer, there's the Hope and Hurdles Pack, which is an excellent resource. So there's just some contact details on the bottom of the screen there about how you can access these. And also just wanted to let you all know that this presentation will be available via YouTube afterwards. So if I'm flicking through these a little quickly, you will be able to hop back onto the internet and have a look at them down the track. It should be within the next week or so that we get this video up. Also wanted to let you know about Ovarian Cancer Australia. So this is a national leading organisation for ovarian cancer awareness, support, advocacy and research. And there's a specific kit for women who have been diagnosed with ovarian cancer called Resilience, which again is an excellent resource. So there's some contact details on the screen for Ovarian Cancer Australia as well. Recan's a local service for Victorian women, and it's based in Melbourne. There's a library, information sessions, they hold reflexology and gentle exercise sessions, and this is an organisation that focuses specifically on breast or gynecological cancers. So the contact details are on the bottom of the screen there as well. And Think Pink. Think Pink, again, a local organisation looking at providing financial and emotional support to those affected specifically by breast cancer. So there's some contact details on the bottom of the screen for Think Pink as well. And just to give you a little bit more information, certainly people are welcome to contact us if they would like to be linked with a pro bono financial planner. As Joan said, this is for people who are unable to afford this sort of assistance. We can actually link you up with someone free of charge, and we can do that within your local area. And it's a national program, which means that it doesn't matter whether you're in Wollongong or Warrnambool, you'll be able to access that service. The other thing a couple of things that you might not be aware of that have just recently become available through Cancer Council is a workplace issues advice service, and that links you up with actually a HR advisor. And so sometimes people, when there's a cancer you're experiencing a cancer, there's obviously, workplace situations. I'm getting tongue-tied. It's the end of the night for me. So there are HR advisors who will be able to step you through the right processes there. So all of these services are available via our 13 11 20 number. The other service that you might be interested to know about is our small business advice service, which involves tax accountants who are able to provide advice for people. And I guess when cancer is advanced, and if you are running a small business, there's lots of issues there that might be relevant to explore with someone of that expertise. So just to find more about the Cancer Council services in your own state, that's the web address for Cancer Council Australia, and then you can click on the map and that'll take you to the Cancer Council in your relevant state. And as I said, the Cancer Council helpline is 13 11 20, and that's a national number. So, look, I'm going to draw us to a close. We're right on time, and I just thank you, everybody, for hanging in with us and sitting with us in this information. And thank you very much to Joan and Simon and Philip for providing us with such comprehensive information tonight. I think it's very much appreciated and very needed. So really do appreciate that. And I think watch this space for the future. We've sort of alluded to perhaps another follow-up session in the future. So let us know what you think. What could we do better? What could we do the same? What else would you like to see from us? So, as I said, when we close this webinar, it should take you to an evaluation page, and it should only take 5 minutes or so to fill in. So we'd really appreciate knowing what you think. So without further ado, I think we'll finish the evening, and it's time for everyone, including me, to go and get a cup of tea. So thanks, everyone, for joining us, and we'll touch base soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.